You are listening to the Whiskey Tango Chaos podcast.
The working man's liquor.
The working man's liquor. It became very obvious very quickly that I was not meant to ever be in a cockpit of anything. So
real leadership is the day-to-day. It's like, what behavior modeling are you doing for the people around you? It'd be like Chihuly with bourbon in it.
yes. Wow, you didn't even, there was no hesitation there.
No way I'm going to come up with that off the top of my head. I think the most
top 5 characteristics of a bad leader.
And the chaos starts now.
Welcome back to the Whiskey Tango Chaos podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Spakes, a Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force, kind of. Here with my wife, Amanda.
What do you mean, kind of?
I got this sweet new gig. It doesn't really feel like the military anymore.
That's true. I haven't seen you in a uniform in weeks now, which is kind of depressing.
You did the other day. She got all hot and bothered in the kitchen.
I did. I'm a sucker for a uniform. I love it. It looks good on you.
I don't even remember why I wasn't. Oh, I had to go into my old office for something.
Yes. It was great.
Yeah. Little life update. We've definitely recorded podcasts since then. Have I talked? I just maybe haven't talked about it on an episode.
Probably not. And this is probably one of the reasons / excuses as to why we've been so delayed really absent and delayed in getting started back up again. So take it away. What have you been up to?
Yeah, I was super fortunate to luck into a new gig as a senior enlisted leader for a software development detachment that is started up out here. Won't go into like all the details and bore everybody, but the super fun parts is that we work downtown in a super fancy like civilian building, normal office, wearing civilian clothes, living life to the fullest out there. Well, it's a solid time.
Best civilian life. It's funny though, because some of the things you've come home and been excited about, I felt like I've had to tell you, this is, even when you get out, this is not how most civilian offices are. So
I'm screwed. Like the airmen in my office are definitely screwed because they don't know anything different. They were at our old office, so they know what like a crappy building is like, because that building is literally falling apart. But now they've been here. If they ever go anywhere else, it would be awful.
Yes.
Even now, like my office is by far the nicest office I've ever had, and probably the nicest office I ever will have. So that's going to be a tough transition.
It will be.
But bonus, being where we're at now, like in a normal like civilian building, I can have whiskey like in my office. I think it was the second day my boss brought in 2 bottles of bourbon. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. And so then I brought in a handful of bottles. I think now between the two of us, I think we're at like 8 or 9 bottles in the office. Well, it's not a bad gig.
Well, that's part of it. So like the office that I work in is newly renovated and very nice. There's no blue light that comes on at 2:00 for everyone to have a beer. There's no bottles of whiskey. We
don't actually have a light. We just yell blue light for the moment because we have this graphic designer that's really been slacking and building us a sign.
Hey now.
So no, it's been great. It's been keeping me super busy though. It's been a fun opportunity. So trying to learn a ton, been doing a whole bunch of training, and then just staying busy trying to get used to the new role. And also just, it's a great opportunity for me to like learn something new and upskill and hopefully move on to what look like greener pastures here as we look to transition out of the military in the next year. So I'm trying to make the most of it, which means that I work a lot.
Yeah, you've gone early in the morning and home very late at night. So there has been a
Sometimes there's a direct correlation between the whiskey in the office and how late I'm there though. So that'll happen.
Kind of figured. So anyway, here we are. We are finally back.
Yeah, we've been busy. We've had work and kids' birthdays and T-ball and all sorts of stuff. It's busy season for everybody.
Yep. Lots of family coming into town, lots of friends coming into town, which is great. It's been wonderful to visit with everybody. Speaking
of friends coming into town, we are like T-9 days from the Hollings coming to visit again. So I'm sure we will do another episode when they are here. What else have we done? Let's see. In the meantime, Amanda went back to Ohio for a week.
I went back to Ohio for a week. It was cold. They greeted me with like 30-degree temperatures, and I immediately wanted to run back to Texas, which is not something I thought I would say ever.
Yeah, Amanda was super pumped to see our friends. That part she enjoyed a ton.
Awesome.
But I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like you got like a weird sense of closure from going to Ohio. I think did. Amanda, like always, I got the impression that you kind of always held it in your mind of like, or that you still had like nostalgia for Ohio, I think, just because of like the transition here. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, like in terms of PCSs, this was like a relatively smooth one for us. Mm-hmm. But it's still different. Like a lot of big change, like moving away from family. We had a really close knit friend group in Ohio, and then moving here, working remote, where you don't have like people that you work with and see every day. I think Amanda had a lot of nostalgia for Ohio, and so what was it like going and revisiting it, and then realizing like Texas ain't half bad?
Yeah, well, I mean, Ohio has always been home, but I think for us this last time we went back, there was a lot of firsts that happened. So first house we've ever bought. There's a lot of firsts with the kids that happened. We had friends that lived next door to us that became family that, we could just pop our head out the door and like wave as our kids ran down to play with their kids. It was just a really great community. So it was hard.
Chris and Megan, Eric, Michelle, Ben, we had like
so
all
many.
Chad and Rebecca, like all within at least a street. It was like the furthest one away,
right?
Like all in the same subdivision.
It was phenomenal.
That's not even including like all the people that we knew from work or family and friends from having lived there before.
Well, and I feel like in Ohio we had a lot of people that were in the same life stage as us. With as far as like kids,
like
kids
mid-30s, younger
ages.
kids.
Like it was hard to leave that, especially coming here when the area is brand new, and then there's a lot of people here that I have met, but we're in different life stages. Either their kids are a lot older, or they're incredibly young and they don't have children. So it's just taken a little bit more time to find our community. So yeah, going back to Ohio, it was. I don't know. I held it in such a high regard that when I got there, I wasn't expecting to feel a weird sense of closure is what it was for me. Cause I show up and I was great to see friends, and it was, great to see coworkers, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But as I'm driving around, I got this, feeling like I'm, I don't belong here anymore. This isn't home for me anymore.
And who knows where we end up ultimately, but, I think I bought off on Texas like way faster than you did. I think you getting to go back to Ohio for a week made you like buy into Texas more.
It did.
But anyway, hold on. We're getting way too far down the rabbit trail. I screwed up the order of events.
You did.
This is Whiskey Tango podcast. This is the Whiskey Tango Chaos podcast. So we need to start it off the same way we start every podcast off, which is what are we drinking?
Right.
And as always, ladies first, what you got?
So this is courtesy of our realtor, Todd. Hey, thank you.
Todd Hackett, if you're in the San Antonio area, fantastic realtor. He was very, very helpful.
Absolutely amazing.
We still chat with him from time to time, and he even just helped us out getting us some information for our first property appraisal from the county. So thanks a lot, Todd.
Yep. So this is Wilderness Trail. It is a small batch Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, bottled and bond. It's 100 proof. So I already just took my first sip because we've been talking here for a couple of minutes. It's extremely smooth. Not a whole lot of bite to it. You get some of the typical bourbon caramel notes. But it's a good, easy drink. And it's delicious. I'd recommend this one for sure.
Oh, back to Todd. He's also a retired Air Force colonel. So if you're PCSing out this way and you need a realtor that understands like what that is like,
go with Todd.
Yeah, go with Todd. He's awesome. All American Realty is the company. But thanks, Todd. He still has to come over and check out the whiskey room. That was on the list of things to do. But I am taking it back to what I think is the first whiskey that I ever drank, like intentionally trying to drink good whiskey.
Yeah.
Like obviously I had been like 20 and drank Jack Daniels and like all of those sorts of things and mixed them and done like shots at a bar, whatever the case may be. But my first whiskey that I ever bought to try to intentionally drink good whiskey was Scotch, and it's this Balvenie Caribbean cask. So it's aged 14 years, and then it's extra matured in rum casks. And this is still to this day one of my favorite like whiskeys, whether you're talking Scotch or bourbon or whatever, or rye, like anything.
Yeah, hands down.
This Caribbean cask is still one of my favorites.
Yeah,
really nothing from Balvenie's ever disappointed me.
No, I had to stop myself from drinking too much of that while you were deployed. I kept going back for like a little bit more and a little bit more, and the next thing you know, like most of the ball is gone. I'm like, well, crap.
It's the best, and it's the Caribbean cask is not overly expensive. I think it's like $60 or $80, something like that.
Yeah, that's about a $60 price point. So
I think that one's 60 because I think it's the double wood that's 80. I don't know. We can look it up, but it's in terms of like scotches. We've talked about this before, but like the price point to get into like a good scotch is generally a little bit higher than just getting into bourbon. So that's a really good scotch, but still, all things considered for a scotch, it's a pretty good price point. But if you're getting into scotches, try anything Balvenie. You won't be disappointed.
You will not. So back to Ohio. I was glad to have moved on to a new location that's going to challenge me in different ways. Because I think for Ohio, because it's home, it was getting really comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's different. We didn't ever intend to leave Ohio. Like, we didn't think we were going to PCS again. But once it happened, by the time we actually PCS'd, I was like excited to leave and go do something different. So I think like I had already processed that, I guess.
Well, and it's different for you too, because
I didn't grow up there.
That's not home for you. Home is Georgia. So for me, every time we would go home and then we would leave again, it almost felt like I was like ripping the Band-Aid off again it was easy to move back to because it was extremely comfortable and I knew the area and I knew, where to go and what to do. And, you're ripping the Band-Aid off. It was a
great safety blanket of a PCS.
Yes.
Like because Jackson was 5 months old when we moved back there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was nice, like with all of that stuff, like learning how to be parents and everything else.
Yeah. And having family super close.
Yeah. Having family there, knowing the area. So like buying a house was relatively simple in terms of like knowing where to live and like that sort of thing. And then stuff that we didn't know was going to happen was then I think a little easier because we knew the area and had friends. Like I got there and we weren't there very long. And I went to Korea for a little over a month and then, came back and immediately got told I was having to deploy, which I didn't think was going to happen. And then that turned into a 9-month deployment because of COVID. And I think all things considered, it was great that we ended up back there again.
Absolutely.
But I'm excited to make the most out of Texas. I so far love it. One, I hate the snow. Although if it would stop hailing, that would be great. Yeah, Texas thunderstorms are different.
They are, and I didn't realize that. I feel like the lightning hits lower; they're just more intense.
And there's also not like
hail in like every single one. I don't think we've ever been in like Ohio. It rarely hailed.
Yeah, like maybe twice the whole time we were there.
Yeah, here it hails all the time.
Yeah, here it's hailed 3 times in the like 6 months that we've been here.
Yeah,
or I guess it's been more than 6 months now, but it's been almost a year now. But yeah, I think part of the thunderstorms problem is that's like there's not. Like the sewer system's like not the same, so things don't drain off the same way, just because it's generally drier here. So if you get like a real thunderstorm, everything just floods. Mm-hmm. Also, I don't know if it's just a San Antonio thing or if it's an all over Texas thing, but people cannot drive in the rain.
No.
Like they just stop. So like if it's raining, my like 35-minute commute into work is easily an hour, probably an hour and 15 minutes because people just, and it's not even that there's wrecks. It's that people just won't drive. They'll be going like 30 miles an hour on the highway.
Yeah. I just avoid going out at all.
That's fair. So. All right. Well, I think that's most of our life update. Other than that, we are just like getting into the summer. So, trying to do all the summer things, getting ready to, celebrate Waylon's 4th birthday and then my birthday, a beach trip, an anniversary trip to Costa Rica. Just me and the old lady. That'll be a good time.
Yep. So we got a lot of things coming up on the horizon as well. Some more travel and it'll be fun. And it's been a busy start to the summer and I don't expect it to slow down anytime soon. So bear with us as we get these podcasts out to you. Also,
it should be a good time. We'll try to stick to our like regular schedule of every other week at this point. Truthfully, I have to take the blame for this one. Amanda is the one that like keeps the schedule and pushes me. And then inevitably it's like the night before they're supposed to go out. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh shit. Like we're supposed to be doing that. Well, so they get delayed. But
in fairness,
as
busy as we have been, I feel like the DoD has done a halt on policies. Because for a while there, that's all we've been talking about is updates and policy changes and,
there's been a few. There's
increases and
there hasn't been anything like crazy controversial, but they did change our EPRs. Okay. Now they're called OPBs and EPBs, but we can go through that. That might be something we can go through with Chad while we're here or something. Okay. But it's nothing overly controversial. It's been a little quiet here lately.
It's been quiet.
Either that or I just haven't been paying attention at all. But
no, I think it's been quiet. Either that they're listening to the podcast. Or like, if we don't say anything, they won't have anything to talk about.
Yeah, that's totally it.
That's
one of the 10 people that listen to this is definitely Chief Bass. All right, so we'll make this one a little short and sweet, but Amanda, as always, put out a feeler on our social media and asked for some questions, so we're going to go through and answer those. Feel free, anytime you have a question, you can either email us, whiskeytangochaos at gmail.com.
Yes,
Or
whiskeytangochaos at gmail.com.
Yeah, or any of our social medias at Whiskey Tango Chaos. It doesn't have to be one where we ask for a question. If you put a comment on there asking a question, we'll make sure to get to it.
Yeah, you can also just go to our website, whiskeytangochaos.com, and there is a comment section where you can throw us a comment or a suggestion or a question or a riddle or a whiskey suggestion.
I don't know that we've ever actually gotten a comment through there.
We have. Actually, one of our questions tonight was through our website.
How about that?
I know. It does work. All right, you ready to get started? Yeah, we heavily relied on you guys for this episode, but I think it'll be fun. So you want to start off with a serious one?
You guys are our like crutch when we know we need to get a podcast out, but we haven't really like thought through a whole plan, or nothing dumb has happened in the military that we're aware of at the moment.
All right. So here we go. First one. If you were allowed to commit one crime and not be arrested or prosecuted for that crime, what crime would you commit and why?
Do you have your answer already, or are you waiting for me to go first? You can go first because I haven't thought through any of these yet.
So I was kind of thinking, I feel like I would want to hold on to this card for a while because there's not really anything or a particular instance that comes to mind where I have I'm going to play the get out of jail free crime card for this. But so big picture, probably assault, because there's sometimes as people just need a good punch in the face.
I mean, that's fair. That's like the dark road, I guess, like assault or murder or something. I would probably go like theft, like a bank robbery or something, because money certainly doesn't like solve all your problems, but it sure as hell helps with a lot of them. So that's probably what I would do. And I'd have a hell of a whiskey collection.
Yeah.
I guess I'd probably still stay in because I'm so close to retirement, but have a hell of a whiskey collection, pay off the house, not have to worry about any of that stuff anymore.
Go buy some land somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I feel like we went like the two super obvious routes. There's probably like a more obscure crime, but I can't think of them. That's the one I would probably go with.
Yeah, I couldn't think of anything either. That's kind of what I went with. Okay, so here we go. Next one. If you were a master distiller, what would your mash bill be? What would the bottle design be? What would your price point be? Like, we want all of the juicy details here.
I haven't read these, but that's got to be from Mule.
It was from Mule. Good job.
That's definitely a Mule question. Man,
So
this would be a better
points for
this would be a
guessing
better question to him because he knows like more about like what mash bills in part like which flavors or styles better than I do.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you at all.
So I will tell you here lately, instead of drinking like straight whiskey, I've been on a big old fashioned kick. That's mostly because there is a super awesome rooftop bar. I think it's called the Moon's Daughters. It's on top of the Thompson Hotel, right across the street from my office. And they make a great old fashioned. There's actually a few places around here that make a good one. So they make a really good one.
Okay.
Rock and Rye.
Okay.
In the rim.
Okay.
And the General Public in the rim. All three make really good old fashions around here.
I've had the one at the General, and that was delicious. That was probably the best one I've had.
I'm sure there's other ones.
Down.
But anyway, so getting back to that. So my mash bill would be high in rye because I prefer rye in my old fashioned instead of just straight bourbon.
Okay.
I mean, I'll drink it with straight bourbon too, but I prefer rye. What would my bottle look like? That was the other one, right?
What would your bottle design be, and what would your price point be?
So my price point, I wouldn't want it to be stupid. So my price point would probably be like $65. So it's like classy-ish.
Okay.
But not like so high end that, you're excluding people. It's like, okay, this is like good whiskey. My bottle would probably be
it's a middle class of whiskey. So you want to be a middle class whiskey.
Yeah.
Got it.
The working man's liquor.
A working man's liquor.
My bottle, I would also go boring with the bottle. So I would go like kind of normal. Well, some people may think this is annoying, but I like the like skinnier tall bottles, so think like Penelope or High West or Eagle Rare, like that style bottle. And I also kind of like the plain ones like that. But I'd probably do something, I'd want it to be like kind of interesting, like the blown glass kind of with High West, or like the imprinted glass like with Smoke Wagon. Something like that. But I'd still want it to be clear so that you could see through it. And then, let's see, rye. What kind of theme would we do with the label? I don't know, to come up with some sort of theme for the label.
What would you call your whiskey? Do you have an
I
idea?
don't know. No way I'm going to come up with that off the top of my head on the spot. But right now I'd probably do a rye because I've been doing a whole lot of old fashioned. So it would be
You've been in a rye.
high in rye for the bill, $65, tall skinny bottle with some sort of cool like character that's not just like plain clear glass. It'd either be like blown glass or stamped or something like that. Maybe stamped with like a challenge coin in the top on the front of it, like you know how Smoke Wagon has like the little circle thing.
Yeah, I do kind of like the Willet bottle design.
The pot
it
still.
looks like a I just think of like a genie in a bottle.
Yeah, but bottles like that like end up pissing me off because they're so annoying to store. Like
That's
I would
true.
almost prefer I think that's why I prefer the more like normal bottles because they're so much easier to store like in a cabinet, like on the shelves and stuff over there. It's kind of okay that some of them are like a little weird because you're not looking for maximum storage. You kind of want to see the bottles and that's more interesting to look at.
Yeah.
But just in terms of day-to-day use, I prefer the bottles to be like pretty normal because I can stack way more of them in our like storage area.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Did you look at my notes?
No.
Because this is going to get real boring. You ready for my notes on this?
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I didn't even know we had notes for this podcast.
So, you know,
I knew we had a notes section for the podcast, but I didn't know you had made any for tonight.
So I made myself notes to answer some of these questions because
I'm going in this blind.
You are going in this blind. I am not. I have a hard time thinking on my feet at times, and I'll think of my answer 3 hours later, which nobody wants to sit around here for 5 hours and listen to me come up with an idea. So anyway, so I had, if I were going to do this, I don't know, again, I don't know mash bills. It's not, no clue. I know what I like and what I don't. And so mine would be triple distilled.
Oh yeah, because you know you like that from like
that.
Green
I know
Spot.
I like from the Irish whiskeys. I know I like triple distilled, so I would want mine triple distilled. I also said $60 because I'm worth it.
That's not even an expensive whiskey.
No, but I mean it's not cheap either. Middle of the road. And then I also said a blown glass bottle, but I would want and I know this is weird, but I wanted it to be like a blue glass bottle.
Also, you're bougie, so like blown glass for you would probably not be like plain glass with just some air bubbles in it. It would be like some ridiculous shape.
It would look cool. Absolutely.
It'd be like Chihuly with bourbon in it.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, we are.
Can I do that?
No.
Is that possible?
I mean, you can do anything you want, I guess.
When you rob that bank from question one.
I would not let you have any of my stolen money to make a stupid whiskey bottle.
That's not fair.
Not allowed.
But I thought that was like, what is this marriage then?
No.
Like, what is this? We can't.
We're supposed to keep each other from doing dumb things.
Oh, all right.
Too
well,
late.
You can't steal the money, and I won't use the stolen money for a ridiculous whiskey bottle. Anyway, that was kind of those are my two thoughts on that one. All right. What Avenger would you want to drink whiskey with, or have a glass of whiskey with, or have a beer with? What Avenger would you want to drink with?
I mean, this is probably the low-hanging fruit, but I'm going to take Tony Stark because, one, he probably has the best collection because he's, like, the richest.
Think about that.
And two, he has, like...
bottles. He would have all the rare bottles, I think.
Yeah, and he has, like, all of the cool stuff. Like, if you're in his house or, like, whatever. So, like, if you're drinking with him, like, there's going to be lots of other, like, cool stuff to do.
So you want to just get drunk and play with the gadgets.
Yeah, I'm careful with that pause there. Yeah, no, I'm going Tony Stark.
Okay.
Because all the other ones, like, I don't think... I mean, if we're talking, like, drunk dad bod Thor, that might be good, but I don't know what his whiskey collection would be.
Okay.
Captain America maybe would be into bourbon. That's, like, very American, I guess. But I feel like the conversation would be more boring.
Yeah, I was going to say Captain America, but I think I'm currently drinking with Captain America.
Too far.
No, it's too far.
You're cut off.
I would want to drink with Star-Lord because it's Chris Pratt.
Yeah, that's fair. My backup would be like whoever Scarlett Johansson's character is.
Isn't she Black Widow?
Couldn't tell you. This is also going to disappoint Chad, but I have watched very few of the Avengers movies. I think I've seen most of the Iron Man movies. I saw the first and maybe the second, like, actual Avengers movie.
Yeah.
I've not seen the one with the Infinity Stones. I've not seen the one after that, like the last one.
Yeah. this Star-Lord, his
There's
character,
just too many of them.
Well, fair. That's true. But he seems to have like a lot of fun, but he is very sarcastic. So that's like right up my alley.
Yeah, Star-Lord would be fun.
Plus, it's Chris Pratt.
Yeah. Still going Tony Stark.
All right. Well, you have fun with your gadgets.
We'll have to pose that back to. I'm assuming Chad asked that question, right?
Yeah, Chad asked that.
This is like my favorite part is trying to guess who asked the questions.
Yep.
But I'll
You're gonna post that back.
Yeah,
to
we'll
him?
have to post that back to Chad when he comes.
All right. If you could fly any Air Force aircraft, what would it be?
A-10.
Wow, you didn't even. There was no hesitation there.
My favorite airplane on Earth.
Okay. All right.
There's definitely cooler ones like that do cooler things or that are newer or like whatever, but because like for the longest time, like all growing up, as soon like at any time, like once I knew what some airplanes were, like SR-71 was my favorite.
Okay.
Excuse me. So for anybody wondering,
also looks cool.
Yeah, it looks cool. It's a super fast, high flying spy plane essentially.
Yeah.
That doesn't or is not like active anymore. Oh man, can't stop sneezing now. Hold on.
Bless you.
So that was my favorite for the longest time just because it looks super cool. Especially like when I was a kid, like it looks like something out of a science fiction novel.
It does, yeah.
So that was my favorite for the longest time until I went to Afghanistan and got to work super closely. I say super closely. It's not like we were best friends, but like I got to work a lot with the A-10s and see them in action and like really have an appreciation for them and just like how invaluable their close air support is and how it was like the perfect example of when you build like something that is like a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
So we built like all of these other like, you know, 4th, 5th gen fighter jets that were supposed to like replace the A-10 and provide close air support, but then also do all of these other things. But then none of them do it well because they're just designed to do too many things, including like the F-35 and all that.
Yeah.
And so like anytime we got, and for like, for GWAT, for Afghanistan, like that's, we weren't getting in dogfights up there. So like, that's what you needed. So if we had a night where we needed that and the A-10 was around, you knew it was likely going to be a very good night. It was definitely fun to watch. So, yeah, ever since then, that's been by far my favorite airplane. And so that is what I would like to ride on.
You want to ride on it, or
Or
you would
ride
fly
in,
it,
fly
or
it.
fly it? Is it a 2-seater or 1-seater?
They have like the 2-seater ones at Edwards. Remember they had like that trainer one that had 2 seats.
Yeah. Okay.
But typically it's a single seat.
seater.
Also, if you listen to our theme music at the very beginning of every episode, the very last sound that you hear is the A-10's gun. And if you're ever in Wright Pat, they have one in the Air Force Museum, and they have it like kind of like deconstructed a little bit, so you can see like just that gun. Like they built an entire airplane around that gun.
Yeah,
like,
it's cool looking.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty cool looking.
A-10 go brr.
My answer's a little bit of like expectation versus reality type of thing. So expectation would be, it would be cool if I could fly like a fighter jet, like an F-22, F-35, one of those. But reality would be like they would put me in like a C-5 or like more or less like a drone. Like, let me put you on the ground.
Also, you don't even do roller coasters. Like F-35 would definitely make you puke.
So when I was working out at NASA out at Edwards, we had a simulator there, a C5 or C17 simulator, and they let us during orientation day like fly it, and it became very obvious very quickly that I was not meant to ever be in a cockpit of anything. So, yeah.
I mean, you didn't have any training or anything, so we'll give you a little bit of a break. But
it was not pretty.
They all have their purpose.
I drifted the plane. It looked like Tokyo Drift, but with like a
that's fair
giant behemoth of an aircraft. So they would probably just, if they had to put me in anything, it would be like, let's just give you the drone controls and good luck to you.
My honorable mention would be the U-2 probably.
I don't think I've ever seen one of those.
They look weird. They're like super long wings, kind of long, and then the like main section is long and skinny, but they essentially they fly in like damn near outer space.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Their pilots wear the big orange like astronaut suit looking things.
Yep.
A few of our friends in Edwards came from that community, and also just a like really cool platform.
All right, next question. Who is the worst leader you've ever had, and what made them terrible?
Oof.
I know. I should have started off with all the fun ones. You want to go back to the drinking with the Avengers?
Well, that one I just like have to think about.
Because you've had so many bad leaders, or it's hard to choose?
Well, it's kind of a mix. I feel like my career is kind of bridged, like, I mean, it would be the same for anybody that does like a whole career that does like 20 years.
Yeah.
You bridge so much time that like kind of the thought process and the way people do things, I feel like it evolves and changes a lot. And so I had a lot, I guess I would have like leaders in different eras. I've had leaders that were bad for different reasons. Also leaders that were good for different reasons. I don't mean to paint the picture that like I've only had bad leadership, because I would say like by and large, at least my like direct supervision has always been pretty good. And then I've usually had at least one or two like good mentors and examples like above that. So it was just different. Like when I first came in, I think we were almost like more apt to have bad leaders.
Okay.
Maybe for different reasons than we have bad leaders now. Like I think then we had bad leaders just because that was like the culture of the way things were. Not that we were intentionally making them bad, but people at the time in the military and in the Air Force in general, like we still led by like position, like by positional power. Like you didn't. I feel like when I first came in, you had very few leaders who were intentionally trying to be good leaders or who people intentionally wanted to follow. Just because of like their own leadership potential or like the way that they interacted with you. I would say by and large, most leaders that I interacted with just expected you to do everything that they said because of the position that they were in.
Okay.
Now, granted, there were like definitely exceptions to that, right? Like we've talked about, at the time he would have been Master Sergeant Wicks probably. He retired as a chief. Like he was in, like when I first came in, he was kind of sort of in our chain of command, and then ended up being our squadron chief. But group chief. Anyway, and he was not like that. Like he was always like he was a good leader then, he'd be a good leader now, he'll be a good leader 30 years from now. Like, so there are like, I'm not saying everybody was like that, but by and large, especially at the like staff sergeant and tech sergeant level, like that was kind of what it was. And some of that, like you're just figuring it out. Where I feel like now you don't really see that as much. Like where now I think where you find bad leaders is with people that are like just trying to progress quickly or to like move up in rank. Not so much that they just like try to rule with an iron fist. Like at least in my experience, it may be different in other career fields. And it also may just be that like, I'm older and I've progressed in rank. So like the people that are going to be above me likely would know better than to lead like that in the first place because
they've figured it out at this point. Well, hopefully they have been in it long enough that they have kind of worked out their kinks
right. Like at this point
how to be a good leader.
Yeah. Like at this point, like my boss is likely going to be an officer, for the past, well, I guess technically, like when I first got here last year, my boss was a captain, but before that, it had been a major for a couple years. Now it's a lieutenant colonel. So like they have more experience, so they just don't lead that way.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just like ignorant to like what it's like kind of at like the senior airman and staff sergeant levels, like E4, E5 levels, but I feel like you don't see that as much anymore. I think the bigger problem now is that we've promoted a culture where like everybody needs to be a leader and you have to be a leader. And I'm doing that in quotes, like you have to be a leader on paper in order to get promoted. And so the problem is that we have a lot of people that try to do the things that on paper make them look like a leader without actually doing leader things.
So what's a paper leader look like? Like what would qualify as a paper leader?
Like, so they'll put themselves in positions to like run, like when it matters for something that would look good on like an EPR bullet. So they'll do like, oh, okay, well, I'll put together this event because somebody at the group is going to be there, or it's worth a lot of money. Okay. But then they may be absent the whole time, like not even really leading it.
Got it.
But they know that when they put that on their EPR, they can either tie it to like some bigger event or something at the group level or the wing level, or it's going to be like a lot of money or like a big number, a large amount of money that they can tie back to that event.
Okay.
Or they'll tie themselves like only to things that they know are like strongly within the wings priority, so that it'll get them stratified higher when those buzzwords are heard or seen on their board or on their EPR.
Got it.
Or EPB now, I guess. Those kinds of things, but then they're not doing like the day-to-day things. And I think that's like the biggest thing, is that people, our biggest thing is that we view leadership as like these goals or these like bullet statements, I guess, for lack of a better word. Like, okay, I'm a good leader because I can fill out these like 10 bullet statements on my EPR or however many it's going to be now. Where like really like real leadership is the day to day. It's like, what behavior modeling are you doing for the people around you, so that they see kind of what right looks like? How are you interacting with your people on a day to day basis? Do you know what makes them tick or what makes them not tick? Do you know how to get the most out of them, how to encourage them, how to push them forward? What kind of feedback do they want? Are they somebody that you have to like be, I don't want to say like talk around, but do they need like more time, or maybe like a gentler approach? Or are they okay with you being like more aggressive and straightforward? I will say in my experience, most people have appreciated like straightforward feedback.
Yeah.
Occasionally you get the person that says that they want straightforward feedback and really honest, like just blunt feedback, and then they clearly weren't ready once you give it to them. But
they need more of the sandwich.
Yeah. Oh God, I hate that philosophy, but yeah. So anyway, I think that's where we've gone wrong. Where like before, I think everybody, when I first came in, it felt like a lot of supervisors handled things. They're like, well, we're the military, so you just do what I say without any context because I'm in a position over you. And that's why leadership was bad.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that they were like chasing rank or whatever. All you had some of that too, but it in the old promotion system, it was not nearly as prevalent as it is today.
Okay.
And so today, I think the poor leadership is mostly selfish and is brought on by like our current promotion system and the fact that people are chasing promotions, and they look at their value as a leader and how they can quantify the quality of leader they are through what they can put on their EPR and how quickly they promote, versus the way I think you should look at it, and like how is the unit that you're in, or the office that you're in, or the flight that you're in, depending on what level you're at, like, do they function better because you're there and you're driving their mission forward, driving their people forward? What do their EPRs look like? Are they winning awards? Like if that's a metric, I don't really buy into those metrics in general. Like whether it's because there's so much other stuff that goes into that. Like in terms of like, I don't get my value as a leader through like anybody's EPRs. No, like I'm certainly proud. Like when my guys win quarterly awards, like I do want them to get recognized. I think it's important.
Yeah.
But to me, it's more about like having a pulse on how we're functioning day to day versus what that looks like on a piece of paper somewhere. I won't give like the specific name of the person that I think is the worst leader that I've worked for, but anybody that knows me personally will know exactly who he is. I won't say his name because he's a general now.
He's a general now?
Yep. But it was an old squadron commander that I have. He, no, don't get me wrong. So I think we've kind of partially told like some of this story like on the podcast, but I took the long way around to figuring out my life and like becoming a good NCO and taking this career seriously. So I made staff, got it redlined, which basically just means they pulled the stripe before I actually put it on. Then had to like remake it again, which in the Air Force is a long process. Generally, that means you're going to have to wait like 2 years. So I had to do all that. Now, I'll preface all this by saying I got away with a lot of shit that like probably should have had my staff stripe redlined, but what I ended up actually getting in trouble for, in my opinion, wasn't worthy of pulling my stripe, and the way that he handled it in general was a really good example of exactly how I would not want to lead. And he did it with everyone. Like nobody, I have a hard time remembering anyone enjoying working for that man.
Really?
He came across as like really arrogant and like kind of that same mentality of like, you guys just do what I say. Everybody's dumber than me. I have all the answers, blah, 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 blah. Some of this was just like kind of the times, but he was even worse about it than others, but he was a big fan of like group punishment. So if one person did something wrong, then like the whole squadron was going to get in trouble for it and or face some sort of consequence for it.
Do you
So
think
there's a lot of things like that.
Does group punishment work?
I mean, I think it depends. I think there's a time and place, right? So like basic training, yep, makes sense. Like if one person screws up, then your whole flight's probably going to get punished for it. And then it's almost like a team builder in that aspect. But once and maybe it's different for other career fields, but like in general, once you're like a permanent party airman, like I don't think that it applies most of the time. Like, sure, like maybe you group punish everybody and the other folks can peer pressure the person that's like actually the one doing the bad things into like fixing themselves. But more often than not, what I've seen is that it just galvanizes everybody against you or whoever the leader is. And then people don't really pressure that person into him. Like maybe they get mad at him or like think that they're like, all right, there goes airman so-and-so, like screwing off again. They did this. But I think I have gotten much better results by treating people individually. Now, sometimes that has its own pitfalls where you have to have some like other conversations where it's like, okay, well, so-and-so did this and they didn't get in trouble for it or whatever. It's like, yeah, well, you're getting treated differently because you've behaved differently over the course of time. You've already gotten, I've already had to talk to you about this, this, and this. So of course there's like a different standard, especially. So the easy example, right, is if you have an airman that has been in trouble for being like unreliable, not coming into work, not keeping up with dress appearance, all those sorts of things, right? Stuff like that. And then they've already gotten in trouble for it. They come in 5 minutes late. Like, I'm going to say something depending on like what exactly the situation is. They may get more paperwork for it depending on like, what the rest of the circumstances are, like that sort of thing. And then, but I also may have another airman that like is high performing, hasn't given me any issues, and they come in 5 or 10 minutes late. And like, one, like I may not even notice it, but two, if I notice it, like I may just, say, hey, what's going on? Were you like, what happened? And they're like, oh, I overslept. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And that's really kind of the end of the conversation because they have, over the course of time, proven to really be reliable. And we're all human, right? Shit happens sometimes. You're going to oversleep or have something else come up, like whatever the case may be.
Anything.
So that's like an instance where like you're going to treat people individually. And that's generally the way that I do things, unless like I absolutely have to, punish as a group. But that I'm having a hard time thinking of a case where I've had to punish, like intentionally punish like my whole team as a group.
Yeah.
Now, I've certainly had to do things that to them probably like felt like a punishment, but usually at that level, it's like completely out of my control. I'm not doing it to punish them. It's because I've been told like, hey, they all have to be here or do this thing or come in early for this or whatever. But it's not, it might be a reaction to something bad that happened, but it wasn't like my call. It wasn't me trying to like have them come in for something, you know what I mean? A punishment.
Yeah. I wonder why he chose that as his tool.
If I remember correctly at that time, like he didn't really have a ton of experience leading large teams. I didn't get the impression that he had really been around a ton of enlisted. And then he knew that he was at that point on track to make 06, which was also, but it was also like pretty clear that as long as he kept performing, he was probably on track to be a flag officer. And my personal opinion, my impression is that like he was aware of that. That was the ultimate goal. And so he was less concerned with like individuals in the squadron and making sure that the people in the squadron were effective and efficient than he was making sure that he continued to stay on the track that he was on and he got what he thought he deserved out of it. Which was crazy because then the next commander after him was like the exact opposite. He was lieutenant colonel. He was like a super people. He was the one that the one after him was the one that you met right before I deployed. And he was like,
I really liked
him. He was a great leader, cared, all about his, like he was all about the people. It was crazy. Like just how night and day.
Well, and you could tell the few times that I interacted with him, there was a genuine sense about him that he actually cared about not only you, but your home life. Or I remember he met me and he took me into your office and I'm like, this is really awkward because you want to see, come on over. Like,
Yeah, like literally shut down my whole office because we worked in a skiff, and so he was like, "Oh, you've never been in here before?"
I'm like, nope.
And so he like went up to security, convinced them to get Amanda a visitor's badge, walked her in, had them shut down my entire office because like we have to turn off like all the computers, all that stuff.
Yep.
Which is even more hilarious because then you're just showing you around this like office that is like pretty boring. It's just a bunch of desks with computers that are now turned off.
Right. And nobody can work. So they're all just staring at you. And I'm standing in the front of the room. Like, this is extremely awkward. Like, do I do a tap dance number? Like, what am I supposed to be doing here? Like, hi.
He was awesome. Another like good example.
Was so cool though.
So I was getting ready to leave for Afghanistan, and for Afghanistan, that deployment, I was flying on the back of MC-12s doing stuff. And, so you had to have a flight physical because you're flying. I was an alternate for the rotation before me, and so my flight physical had expired. Somehow the initial one, I passed the color vision test, which I have no idea how that happened because I am like super colorblind, super red, green, or color deficient, whatever.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so I have to retake the thing, can't pass the color vision test.
Yeah.
And so I was supposed to go to Fort Bragg for training and then leave from there to deploy. They sent me back home because I needed to pass this flight physical and they didn't have anybody that could do it there, blah, 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 blah. It's turned into this whole thing. I'm talking, of course, keeping my leadership informed, talking to them. And it finally like gets to him from my flight commander. And he's like, oh, wait, hold on. He's like, I went to the academy with who at the time was the Air Force Surgeon General. Mm-hmm. He was like, give me a few minutes. I'm going to call him. So he calls him, then drives to the hospital. Like, no shit, meets me I'm sorry. He didn't meet me at the hospital. My flight commander met me at the hospital.
Okay.
And Colonel Schreiber calls him back and was like, hey, so-and-so, I can't remember who the Surgeon General was at the time, but he's like, hey, so-and-so took care of it. The treatment facility should be getting a call, or flight medicine should be getting a call here in like 10 minutes. Let me know if he doesn't have his flight physical in the next half hour. And like, sure enough, like 15 minutes later, like the person that was doing my like flight physical comes back out with like my flight physical with saying that I'm like color deficient, but with a waiver essentially saying like, yeah, whatever, he's good to go, and send it with me.
Yeah. Just
so I was able to do that deployment, which that was big. It's two things there. One, it just shows like the difference in leaders. Like he didn't have to do that. Like at that point, he was relatively new. So it wasn't like he knew me personally and for any reason to be able to like go out on a limb for me, I guess.
Yeah.
No like major personal connection there. And two, like he's calling in favors from people that he went to school with that like he could have just as easily said like, oh, well, that sucks. You don't get to go. We already had alternates within the squadron that had flight physicals that were good to go. So they could have just as easily sent somebody else or pushed it back up through like the normal deployment process to have it tasked to somebody else, like whatever the case may be. Maybe would have been easier for him to just ignore it, but he didn't. Yep. And that was huge for me. One, like on the heels of having like probably the worst leader I've experienced to having an example, especially at that level, like at a squadron commander level, having like a really good one. And then like that time was just like, ended up being really important for me because like I said, I had my staff stripe redlined. Yeah. So this was kind of like in that interim. So it had already been redlined, but I racked up like more promotion points than the average person just based on the amount of medals that you get for flying, especially if you're in a non-flying career field. Yeah. That became like important, not necessarily in helping me with staff. I had enough time and service time and grade points were a thing at that time. So I made staff by like 1,000,000 points by the time I got to test again. Not because I'm smart, but because I was old. And then, but it was helpful in making tech and also like just in terms of deployments, like it was a really fun deployment.
You really enjoyed that one. I remember him specifically reaching out to you multiple times, asking to meet with me before you deployed. And at that time, you and I were just dating. Like we weren't even engaged yet. I mean, we knew that that's where it was headed, but we hadn't gotten there yet. And he met, it was him in the shirt and you met me just so I
Sergeant Hobbs.
Yeah. Like, hey, we just want to introduce ourselves and get your contact information and want you to know that if anything happens while he is gone, like you've got a family here. We're here to, shovel snow, whatever you need. Like, we've got your back. Let us know. And that was really cool because that was the first experience that I had ever had in that capacity. And especially being a girlfriend, they didn't need to do that. They didn't need to do that in general. But then for somebody not a wife.
It's funny that you bring that up because that Another thing about it, but like that was just an awful leadership team. That commander was terrible. The first sergeant, she was awful, but then it rolled into a very good leadership team.
Yeah.
Colonel Schreiber was great, and then Sergeant Hobbs was the first sergeant.
I mean, even several years later, we had already gone to Edwards and then had come back. I was having issues with getting some medicine for some ointment for Jackson, and
he was assured of the med group at the time.
Of the med group at the time, so not even connected with you at all. And he said, reached out like, hey, listen, like let me know if I need to contact someone for you, which was cool. Like even went from bad to good.
Yeah, that's like I don't know. That was a hell of a tangent. We could do like a whole episode just on leadership if we wanted to. Probably. I think we kind of did that with Marissa. Ended up talking like a ton of leadership stuff. It's tough. Like there's definitely been examples of like bad leaders sprinkled throughout. Mm-hmm. There's also been really good ones. And I think for the most part, people may disagree, but I think a lot of the like bad leadership that gets pointed out is kind of overstated to me in a way.
Okay.
So like, cause you have like squadron commanders, like kind of a big deal if they're a bad leader, but if it's like a frontline supervisor and they're a bad leader, or like a flight chief and they're a bad leader, that kind of stuff, one, it still shouldn't be happening and we should be trying to fix that problem. Right. But if you point to like something with you being a failure, or like your career being like bad because of a frontline supervisor that's not a good leader, like I'd be willing to bet that if we like took a deeper look at it, you're also at least just as big a part of the problem. Like, and just pointing to that as the excuse, because at the end of the day, those things I think most of the time daily can kind of be overcome. The odds of if your frontline supervisor sucks, that like every other frontline supervisor or NCO in your section also sucking, and like your supervisor's boss sucking, like the odds that all of those people are terrible is probably pretty slim.
Yeah. So
if you recognize that your supervisor or whatever is like kind of deficient in the leadership category, like definitely don't, I'm not saying give them a pass, but also kind of like look around and realize who you can go to when you need it and figure it out that way. Yeah, I think that would have been a good one for Marissa. She probably would have thoughts there.
That might have been from Marissa.
That makes sense.
So what are the bad qualities that you have seen for like, so what would your,
I think the most
like top 5 characteristics of a bad leader?
Well, we've covered a lot of them, but like the top 5 things that I've seen, pitfalls, I guess I've seen, or commonalities I've seen with bad leaders: micromanagement.
Okay.
Being absent, being selfish, thinking that they know like all of the answers. So like not being open to other people's opinions, especially if it's coming from like somebody that's below them. Okay. Being pushed into positions too fast. Like that one's kind of like outside of their control, but like, hey, you're this rank, so you must be a leader now. Like you're a flight chief, or now you're whatever. I think the Air Force does a bad job. Like we try to make everybody a leader, and that's, in my opinion, just not the case. Like through ALS and those sorts of things, we can teach people how to manage. But in my opinion, there's a lot of, or like leadership, like true leadership is something that you're kind of just born with. It's more, in my mind, is more personality driven than it is. And I mean, maybe it's not all personality. Maybe some of it is like the way you're like circumstances you're raised in or things like that. But even then, I think it's mostly just a personality thing, like who you're actually born to be, because it's a lot of it, the things that make a good leader. So moving into like those top 5 things, right? It's like somebody it's almost going to be the exact opposite. Somebody who's willing to constantly learning and willing to learn from wherever, right? Somebody who is kind of empathetic and always assumes noble intent, which that's something I totally stole from like the training that I've been in with the contractors who we've been working with. That's one of their like core values, is that they assume noble intent. So it's never like, oh, this person fucked up because they're out to get me or whatever. It's always like, okay, well, why? Like if they did it this way, there was probably a good reason, right? And like blah, 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 moving on. So like kind of empathetic, assume noble intent. I'll kind of wrap that all up into one thing. Selfless kind of wraps it up, I guess, where you're like just being more willing. You care more about the success of the team than the success of yourself.
I would think getting to know your people as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes with like the empathy. It's like hard to be empathetic if you don't actually know your people. Like, I don't know. It's weird to me because like in my mind, being a good leader, because of the way that I think like leadership is driven, in my mind, like being a good leader is actually easier than being a bad leader, because it, like I said, like I think it's like personality driven. So most of the people that I know that are really good leaders, like that's just who they are as a person. They're not thinking about it. They're not, oh, what can I do to be a better leader today? I mean, they might think that to some extent, but it's not like a conscious, oh, I have to fight being a bad leader. It's just like, no, that's who they are, and people follow them. And that's probably why. So maybe that's my fourth one, is just being genuine, right? They are who they are. It's not something that's forced. That doesn't mean that even if you're a good leader, you don't like face challenges. There certainly are challenges. Where bad leaders that I've experienced, it feels a lot of the reasons that they're bad is because they're playing a leader instead of being a leader.
Yeah.
Although I guess the flip side of that is like most of the bad leaders that I had probably also didn't think about building more leadership traits. They probably assumed that they were good leaders and judged themselves.
Well, maybe that's a difference
based off of like what they judge themselves based on like the whatever outputs they were getting for themselves. Like, did I make lieutenant colonel, or did I make this rank, or did I win X number of quarterly awards, and not like the success of the team. Did I make, were the people around me better because I was here?
Well, maybe that is the difference between a good leader and a bad leader. A bad leader isn't aware of any of that and just keeps plowing forward to get to their next goal.
Or they are and they still plow forward.
Where a good leader takes a second to sit back and think, how can I improve, or how can I improve my team? So
that's fair. I feel like if we were going to have like this discussion, we aren't really going to do it justice coming into it cold, and I'd probably want to like sit down and think about it a little more.
But that was the question, and that was our final question for today. So
cool. Well, we said this is going to be a short one, and it's already been way longer than we expected, per usual. So Amanda will get to editing this. It'll be out, and we will do our best to get back on track, releasing these every couple of weeks.
We've got a couple of fun guests that we've talked about.
Yeah, the next one will probably be Chad.
Probably. I don't know. I have to look at a calendar. My brain only functions when staring at a calendar, so probably.
You may get stuck with us one more time before you get Chad, but awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. As always, check us out on social media at Whiskey Tango Chaos, or on our website at or on our website whiskeytangochaos.com.
We do now also have stickers and patches available on our website, and pins. So if you're interested in spicing up your thermos or your front of your laptop, we have those available for you.
Do it.
So
awesome. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Cheers.